Honey, y'all see me on my artistic flair trying to represent Africa for the video. What's up, beautiful? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Lisa May, and this is Thinking Beauty, where we dive into all things politics, pop culture, and personal development. This week, I'm back with a politics video where, first and foremost, we have to give a super huge shout out and thank you to Nas for giving us the book recommendation for this video in the first place. So Nas, thank you. Please continue dropping all the gems and we will continue to scoop them up and give them to the people. So first, let me just say, bear with me on this video, because even though I have an outline for this video, I just feel like it's one of those videos where I might be like really long-winded, go off on tangents. Just bear with me. So this is basically just going to be like a review of the introduction of the book. I learned about the book off of Nas's latest album, Magic. He said that people asked him what books to read, and he recommended Destruction of Black Civilization. So of course, immediately when he said that, I went to Audibles, downloaded the book. One of the things that I absolutely love about the book is it's really inspiring me to like follow up and study other things and look up other things, and I love that. I love that the book opens up talking about, you know, like the old school African and Greek philosophers and historians. I love that because I think it's good to know who the people are that study the times and like chronicle it, you know, like I think it's good to know who the people are that keep up with the culture, basically. So, you know, he put me up on a lot of those, from like Hecataeus to Herodotus to Diodorus to Cicero. So basically, you know, he studied under William Leo Hansberry, which he's pretty significant and interesting in his own right. He's a scholar and a lecturer, and he basically, I think the most notable thing about him is that he is so well studied on African history, if I'm not mistaken. Is it African history? Yeah, he's so well studied on like African history that he couldn't even get a PhD because there's no one to validate his work, basically. So, you know, he's pretty much like in a class of his own. I think that's phenomenal. He started out going to Atlanta University, or like the Atlanta University Network. I'm not sure if that was Morehouse back then or just Atlanta University, but he went there, you know, he started studying, and he found that the libraries didn't have enough information. So like he immediately transferred and went to Harvard. Talk about stun on him, okay? But he did that. So, I mean, obviously it tells you he was from a very affluent family. Like I think his mother, his father was like a playwright, and one was an actress or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But it's worth looking up if you're interested. I also looked up Hecataeus, who was the first known Greek historian, and he was considered the father of geography. So if it's not obvious by the title, so basically what the book is about, just like if I had to sum it up in one word, well actually I think the title does a good job of summing that up. The Destruction of Black Civilization. But basically it seems like what he does is he gives like a layout of just like the landscape of like what inspired him to even write the book, which is a lot of people say that there's not enough African history, there's not enough books and like works and things like that, as if Africa never produced it. And so where he's coming in, he's saying, no, yes, they did, or yes, we did, but it has been systematically erased. He goes into like, you know, the ancient history of Africa and how things came about to be, and I guess, you know, where it is now. Like I said, I haven't gotten very far in the book. One thing that I do know is that even though like I have the Audibles, and that's really good, I want to listen to it, like I listen to it all the time, but I'm still going to get the actual book, like order the physical book, and then still listen to the Audibles at the same time, just so like I can really absorb it. Because the one thing that I love about it is it's inspiring a lot of different thoughts, like things that I wanted to know that I didn't even know that I wanted to know, which I've told y'all that before. That's the thing about Nas. Nas tells you and gives you the things that you need to know that you don't even know that you need. Like, you just gotta appreciate it. But no, in all seriousness, so back to like the historians and stuff. And so he covers Herodotus, Diodorus, and Manetho. And so what is particularly interesting about these particular philosophers and historians, especially the Greek ones, they were the ones who, I guess, recognized or chronicled, or I guess basically they learned from Africa and they learned from Egypt. So that was in a lot of their teachings of what they learned from like the African and Egyptian scholars. Like I said, one of them, I think Herodotus was the first to study in Egypt. So here you have like these Europeans who are going into Africa to study, which is like, he says it in the book, like it's like the complete opposite today. Now you have everyone from around the world that wants to come to the US to get educated because, you know, I guess we have like the best education system. Maybe outside of like London or something. I think London has like some really good schools, at least maybe like Ivy League schools, like I think Oxford or something like that. But anyway, I think that's really interesting. He notes that first thing in the book, how these are particular philosophers and historians who noted the contributions of the Africans and like celebrated it. And actually, it actually made them, what's the word I want to use? I don't want to use a strong word like enemies, but it kind of like put people against them because especially later on down the line when the systematic, you know, destruction started to occur, a lot of the people kind of shunned and didn't like the fact, they didn't like these philosophers because they were ones who really like touted the achievements and the accomplishments of the African people. So let me tell you some of the things that the book is making me think about. So like off rip, it goes so far back, like it gets into like ancient medieval history, like before, like during the BC times. So it really made me think about, just like as a Christian, it made me think about the time period when Jesus lived, the people that came before him, and it just really kind of like hit me like a ton of bricks that like life was going on for like 2,000 plus years before Jesus was even born. And I don't know, that just really made an impression on me, because I think sometimes as Christians we tend to think it's God, then Jesus, and then here we are. But like there really was a lot of life that occurred before Jesus. And what made me think about that is because when you start to get into the dates of like BC, AD, so I was like, wow, these people predated Jesus. And I just kind of always, like I said, that's something that I've always thought about in the back of my mind, but I never like actively like looked it up. But since reading this book, I've started looking into it, and I just think it's pretty interesting. You know, it's led me back to like Cleopatra, because one of the people that he mentions in the book, actually I don't know if he mentions it in the book, but when I was looking up who certain people were, like Herodotus and Hecadius, Cicero's name came up, and Cicero was basically I think a philosopher. He was a philosopher and a politician, but he was like a really big enemy of Cleopatra, and like he kind of set the stage for like basically like her and everyone's demise and like all that stuff. So it's just been really fun diving back into that. And then also going back to Jesus, one of the things that he says that I think is so interesting is he says that a lot of Black history is found, I forget how he worded it, but it's basically found sidelined in the Bible. So while there's not a lot to pull from when it comes to like African history, he says that the Bible is a really good place to get some of that Black history and kind of like cross-reference it. And I think that's so interesting because a lot of people are quick to discredit the Bible and think like, oh, the Bible ain't this, you know, the white man wrote the Bible, da 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 da. And here you have this man saying actually the Bible is a really good source of like Black history and Black information. I don't know, I just really appreciate that. Maybe because I read the Bible all the time. But actually it even makes me want to go back and like read the Bible from front to back. That's something honestly I've never done. I admire people who have done that. Like when somebody tell me they read the Bible like from front to back, I'm just like, oh my God, you are like this. Well, I shouldn't say the second coming. That's kind of blasphemous. But I'm just like, wow, you are amazing, because that's a thick book. Like, and I would love to do that. And I feel like this book is, you know, it's kind of getting me to that point where it's like, you know what, it might be time to really read the Bible the way that I read every other book. So the next thing that I love about the book is that he's asking some really good questions that I've had myself in the past, but never, like I said, never, you know, really studied up on it or like followed up on it. But he's asking some really good questions. Questions like, how did we become slaves in the first place? I know I've always wondered that. And how is it that a highly advanced black civilization was so completely destroyed that in our times, our people find ourselves not only behind other people, but even the color of our skin is like a badge of inferiority. Which I love that he asked that question, because one thing that I've kind of like been struggling with since moving to Atlanta, I'm not sure how long you've been following along on this journey, but if you do, you may know that like when I lived in DC, I never really thought about race or anything. It was just like, people are people, you know what I mean? Like, I'm black, you're white, whatever. Like, it just was what it was. But when I moved to Atlanta, I started to realize like, oh no, this thing, racism is real. Like, oh. And so it just, again, it's, sparked this challenge, this Black History challenge. And so sometimes when you come across different circles, you hear people say like, the black man is God and things like that. Or sometimes you hear like, race doesn't matter. It was like constructed, which I know that. Oh, I get it. But then also it's just like, I don't know. To me, it's something about like, so why them? Was it random? I don't know. But questions like, how did it come about that slavery was only concentrated in Africa? And when did Black Egypt become all white Egypt? Now this is really interesting to me because I didn't know that. I didn't know that like Egypt had been like hijacked or appropriated or whatever. I've only met maybe like 1 or 2 Egyptians in my life, if I'm not mistaken. And to me, they looked black, like they actually had like my skin tone. But in the book, he starts to like break down and really dig into how certain, I guess like the different groups, like the Berbers, the Arabs, the Asians, the Europeans. He really breaks down how, with the mixing, when it came to each continent, it meant a different thing. So, for example, here in the U.S., when black people and white people, have a baby or whatever, in the system, in the racist system, it's like, okay, so now like basically the baby is black. If like what's the saying, the 1 drop rule, But I think in I'm not sure if it's all of Africa or if it was just Egypt, and during that time, it was so if an African mixed with the European, then that baby, that mulatto baby, was going to be considered white. And so that's how like all of these different, or maybe I shouldn't say all of these different, but that's how almost like the girl, how you say it? Tell me how to pronounce this word, Google. Politicization. That's how all of the politicalization came about with, just like the different skin tones and what it meant to each continent or whatever. I just thought that was really interesting, like I said, because I never knew that was a thing. I didn't know that Egypt was considered pretty much like all white now. But one thing I do recall, back when I was living in DC, like probably back when I was in high school, I used to wonder, because like I've always watched the news. Like I've always watched the news, always followed politics. And so if you always watch the news and you always follow politics, then you are always going to hear about the Middle East, okay? Like it just is what it is. But I remember thinking, like, I thought I thought that Egypt was a part of the Middle East. And so when it occurred to me, when I learned that it was a part of Africa, I was like, hold up. Now I know that the way that it's situated, like it's kind of situated there in the middle, but I was just like, yo, they have been claiming, like they have been making it seem like Egypt was a part of the Middle East and not a part of Africa. And I like, my mind was just really blown by that. But he covers a lot of how that happened and why that happened in the book. So I can't wait to get to it. I'm pretty sure he probably already touched on it by now, but it, like I said, it didn't really register. One thing that did register is he touches on, not even touches, he really digs deep into Ethiopia, because, depending on how like woke you are, you might think like if you're like basic woke, then like Africa is the motherland, that's like the origin of civilization, that's the cradle of civilization. If you're like mid-level woke, then like Egypt was the cradle of civilization. But I think once you get to like that next level or that advanced level of being woke, there's a technicality where they actually say that Ethiopia is actually the cradle of civilization, not Egypt. So he spends a lot of time, you know, breaking that down. I can't wait to like go back and like listen to that again and read about that, because that is something that is really interesting to me. Before even this book, I had heard that before, that, you know, Ethiopia was actually the cradle of civilization, and I knew that Ethiopia had more significance than what it might seem. Oh, and then he says, how did the other question is, how could the complete blotting out of Black achievement be done on such a universal scale? Which I wondered that too, like, because it really is universal at this point. Like how did that happen? I can't wait to answer that question. And of course, we're going to answer that question together, because the more that I read about this book, we're going to discuss it in our politics series. But next time, I promise, next time we'll have a little bit more, it'll be a little bit more organized. And the reason why it's so unorganized, one, because I'm not even going to accuse y'all, but y'all don't really be engaging like that, so I never really know where my point of departure comes. But now that I have this video out, I know what's already understood, and then we'll just build on that, so then it becomes a little bit more easy. So if you have a question, if you feel like there's something that I'm like, I could spend more time covering or talk less about that, let me know. Like, let me know how you want me to present this information in these videos, because right now I know this is just like a lot. It's kind of like all over the place. But like I said, I'm just giving you a review of the introduction of the book and what he's talking about. And so basically what he's doing is he's answering those questions. How did we become slaves in the first place? How is it that this highly advanced Black civilization became behind everybody else, and their skin tone became a badge of inferiority? How did it come about that slavery was concentrated in Africa for Blacks only? When did all Black Egypt become all white Egypt? And how was all of this done on a universal scale? So that's what the book is covering. And like I said, it's already made me think about other things. Like, I'm curious now about the clock, the calendar. How do we even get from BC to AD? Of course, I know before Jesus, after Jesus, like I get that. But I'm saying, like, who was the person that was responsible for doing that? But yeah, that's what the book is about. That's what it's about. I'm enjoying it. I'm really fascinated by, you know, ancient and medieval history. I didn't realize that I was as much as I am until like really reading this book, because like I said, it really made me go back and like look up this stuff. I've been looking up Cicero, I've been looking up Cleopatra, I've been looking up Jesus, I've been looking up, you know, who did the calendars, the dates and things like that. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you, check it out. You know, we can read it together. I would love that. If you do get the book, download it on Audibles and get the book and read it, like, come back and let me know, like, if you got a question, something you find interesting, then we can actually have like a conversation and a dialogue about it, instead of me just kind of like randomly shooting things into the air. But yeah, so I'm gonna like wrap this up for now, just because I know it's probably really long. And yeah, so until next time, Lisa May here saying peace, love, and blessings.